it felt
That's
like they
another
needed
podcast
me
episode.
there. Right. It felt like they needed me there.
You're like, see, the other ones just aren't doing this.
Exactly. Exactly. And again, I am not that girl. I am the first to admit that how I got to Stanford, MIT, all of these things was a combination of luck, being in the right place at the right time, and sure, hard work, but there are a lot of people who work really, really hard, and we can't continue to buy it. Those of us who make it can't continue to buy into this narrative that it's a meritocracy.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Thank you.
I hear
for sharing that.
Thank you.
Okay, today I'm super excited because we have an amazing special guest with us, Stephanie Van Putten, who hails from Southeast Washington, D.C., but is really from PG County, Maryland. Shout out to the 20 people we've interviewed from PG County. Her current position is Executive Director with Visible Figures, which we'll get into later. She has a Bachelor's of Science in Management Science and Engineering from Stanford University and an MBA from MIT's Sloan School of Management. Her work is focused in the intersection of human capital technology and sustainability. And some of her claim to fames are that she is a Fortune 40 under 40 winner, which is wild, crazy, amazing, and wonderful. You may have seen her work and her name mentioned in features in Essence, MIT Tech Review, the New York Times, Fortune, Forbes, Bloomberg, and many, many more places. She's worked at all the tech firms, basically, Microsoft, Lockheed, Deloitte, TripAdvisor, and is on the board of Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, which is the world's leading independent nonprofit organization dedicated to ocean research, exploration, and education. But if you know the name Stephanie Van Putten, then you know that she is a huge giant in entrepreneurship and has raised over $2 million in venture capital, which is an accomplishment that less than 100 Black women across the world have achieved. She is the founder and former CEO of Blendor, which was acquired recently. And that is an inclusive recruiting and people analytics software that mitigates unconscious bias. And we mentioned Visible Figures, which is a private network community and platform for high-profile executives. Through that endeavor, they promote health, visibility, prosperity of women leaders across the African diaspora. So welcome so much. We are so excited to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here after 4 years of us plotting and planning to get you here.
The first time we met you, we were like, she needs to be on the podcast. We saw you on the stage. I don't remember which stage it was. Probably Grace Hopper.
It was at Grace Hopper. Yeah.
We were like, whoever she is, we need her. She's amazing.
And I don't remember what kind of session it was, but I do remember we had our Black Girls Color situation. And I don't know, Stephanie, if you remember that.
I don't remember that. I know I saw you guys later at Happy Hour or some event that maybe Google was sponsoring.
That's what it was.
We were all coloring.
Yes.
We were sitting at a table coloring, and it was just all these Black women.
Yeah.
And I think we've probably interviewed about half of them at this point.
Yeah. Seriously.
So we're going to keep moving down that road, but I'm so excited to have you with us.
I'm excited to be here. And for the record, I've been rocking the Modern Figures t-shirt ever since.
Ooh, yay!
Yes. I love the design. I love the fit.
Thank you.
It's a keeper.
Thank you so much. Okay. So we always ask our guests initially to talk about what life was like growing up, because, not everybody comes from the same background, and that's what we want to kind of break through this process of having this podcast of hey, this is who belongs in tech, right? So what was it like growing up for you?
Oh, okay. I would try to provide a little bit of context, but also keep this short because my life is very varied. My childhood. So, my grandparents are part of the Great Migration from the South to the Midwest. My grandfather was an electrician for a Ford Motor Company, and so that afforded them the opportunity to live and work in suburban parts of Michigan, my grandparents and their 8 kids. 5 out of those 8 children attended college, attended HBCUs. My mother went to Tuskegee. My aunt went to Howard. Another went to Bethune-Cookman. Another went to Bowie State. The most notable was my aunt, who started at Bowie, then ended up at the University of Maryland and got a computer science degree in 1984.
Wow.
So my exposure to her was really my foray into tech. However, my grandfather, the electrician, was certainly a part of that foundation, right? And I ended up in the DC area because my mother got pregnant, I think just a year or so after graduating from Tuskegee. Unfortunately, the relationship with my father did not go well. She was enrolled in the military at the time and got discharged, and so ended up homeless for a bit and had to move in with her sister, who, again, was studying at University of Maryland. And that's how I ended up in Prince George's County.
Wow.
And I say I was raised by a village because I truly was. My aunts were very influential. I tell people I come from a matriarchy because going to college wasn't a if, it was a when. When will you go to college? Where will you go to college? Education was just always a priority. So when I discovered the role that Silicon Valley was playing in this whole tech game, and this was in the early 90s, I made a very conscious choice to focus my studies, even then, on tech. So I took AP Computer Science in high school. I joined this organization called Black Data Processing Associates, which had
BDPA.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I was participating in coding competitions. They didn't call it hackathons back then.
Yeah.
It was literally
that's
called.
what it was.
Yeah. Yes. Like all day you're in a room with one computer. It's crazy.
Oh my God.
Trying to solve this application. So that was my early exposure. Moved to Palo Alto when I was 17 to go to Stanford, thinking I was going to major in computer science, but ultimately realized I wanted a bit more of a interdisciplinary degree. And I didn't really identify with the guys who were in the computer lab all day, every day, all night.
Yeah.
It wasn't a fit. It wasn't a culture fit. So I decided to major in management science and engineering because it exposed me to organizational theory, psychology, sociology, and many different fundamental elements of science, engineering, and math that I could apply to a lot of different fields. And the root of it was industrial engineering, right? Like statistics and understanding how organizations operate and optimize resources, whether technical resources or human resources, which is something I've always been fascinated with. And I enjoyed my 4 years at Stanford. I did a lot. And fast forward to now, I'm still in tech, but working closely with issues related to marginalized communities and the planet.
Mm-hmm. So, I was reading about you in preparation for as we do, as academics do, to prepare for things like this. And, what struck me is like, you mentioned in some article about how your mom was like your first example of an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Right. And then your aunt was like very tech savvy. Like she is this future technologist. Right. And so with their powers combined, somehow we have you. Right. And I think that's really interesting because I'm not my parents, right? At all. Like those were the two people who influenced my life the most, but somehow you've kind of merged their existence, right, into what you do, which is kind of cool.
For sure. And My grandfather as well. Like I sort of see myself as a tapestry of all the amazing things that my family members have pursued and accomplished in their lives. I'm super grateful. One person joked with me recently that I was raised by Avengers or something like that. And I asked my
their
aunts,
powers combined.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
I asked my aunts about it. You know, like, how did I end up here? Because none of my cousins, I grew up with about 7 cousins. And none of them even graduated from college, let alone went on to do what I've done. And, you know, I often think kind of like I have a little bit of survivor's remorse. Like, what happened? Why me?
Yeah.
And they said, you know, they exposed all of us to all of these things, but for whatever reason with me, it stuck. And so I'm grateful, but also recognize, like, it's a little bit of luck. It's a little bit of hard work. You know, it's a lot, a lot. There are a lot of things that I can attribute to what you see, but more so than anything, just really grateful for these people that I landed on planet Earth with.
Yeah, a lot of our guests that come on, you know, we often ask them, like, you know, how did you get into tech, even to major in it? But you literally just had it in your house and you're like, why not? You know, some people didn't even know that computer science existed as a major or, you know, things to go into. And it's like, it tells so much about how having those real life examples of entrepreneurship and tech, like right in your own house, you're like, duh, I'm going to college, I'm doing this. And even though you didn't land there, you still landed, you know, in the space and knew that this was something that you could do.
Yes, in my house and in my community. I do not think it's a coincidence that I'm number 21 from PG County. This area, my ex says I grew up in Wakanda. Like, it was just so normal for me to see successful Black professionals. And being a part of BDPA in the 90s, again, like people who were not just professionals, but executives in tech. It just normalized a lot of things for me. So going to Palo Alto was a bit of a shock to me. And even now, 20 years later, seeing how white and Asian tech still is a shock to me because I'm from Wakanda. Like, what is this?
Right.
That's so strange. So I know that you have involvement with BDPA, but you were also involved in NSBE, and I feel like that's true of a lot of other folks. Region 6. Oh, you're one of those people.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry. I just have feelings about it. You know, like, I think, and because of where you were, like, there were some like really heavy hitting NSBE like legends from over there, right? Like, you have Gary May, for example, who went to Berkeley, and like now he's the chancellor at a university in California. So like you are around a lot of amazing examples. And my question is, how did you find the connection with Silicon Valley? Because you mentioned that, like you said, like you saw that they were involved in technology. Well, when did you notice that? Like, how did that come across to you?
So here on the East Coast, we had a few tech companies, you know, IBM. At the time I was in high school, middle school, actually, AOL was on the come up, but it wasn't moving as quickly and it wasn't quite as cool and sexy to me as what was coming out of Silicon Valley. I also really like the idea that you could just be a student in a garage with your friends building something cool.
Right.
That wasn't the reality here. The reality here was like very buttoned up, very professional. Like, you know, I ended up at Lockheed and Northrop Grumman through a program called Inroads, which in a lot of ways grooms you to go into these corporate environments, which even though they were tech, there was still a very corporate kind of buttoned up culture. Versus what I saw happening in California was like, you know, you could show up in your pajamas. Like, it's less about like adhering to this very rigid corporate culture and more about the creativity and, you know, advancing technology to improve the human experience. So I think that's what really drew me.
Status quo was not it, right? Like, appeasing the man was not was not the box.
You know, I'm not an evangelist. I will just say that was why it was attractive. Now, looking back on it, maybe there should have been a little bit more regulation, etiquette, ethics, right? Because things have kind of gone off the rails. And
for sure.
And the CEOs and founders are kind of like shrugging their shoulders saying, oh, we just built the platform. We can't be responsible for what it does to communities, politics, information. But I think that's bullshit. I think there should have been a bit more governance and adults in the room in Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I agree. I'm curious what you mentioned that, you came from Wakanda and that, it was completely different. Like, did you go out there and what was your community like? Like, who were your people when you got out there? Did you find yourself seeking community? Was it hard? How did you get through?
Yeah. So around the time frame that I enrolled at Stanford, the president, President Hennessy, was very vocal about the campus reflecting the demographics of the United States. So we had, for about, I'd say 4 or 5 years, the highest representation of African Americans on campus. So I was there with Issa Rae, Jadena, trying to think who else, notable Black folks in my classes. And so because of that, we had kind of like a HBCU within a PWI. So I leaned heavily on that community. And I would say once a month, I was in the Bay. I was in Richmond. I was in Oakland. I was in Berkeley. And that was also very important to my experience there. I didn't realize it at the time, but I needed it. I needed it to stay grounded. I needed it to stay connected. And to sustain my sense of self-worth, because as I realized in my second term in Silicon Valley, when I was starting Blendor, a lot of people falsely attribute the lack of diversity there to meritocracy, not culture. And so I actively sought out reminders that my culture was just as valuable, just as valid, just as relevant. But it took work. It took intentionality.
Yeah. And then somehow you were like, you know what? I got this engineering degree. Right. Let me go get an MBA. Is that what happened?
No. No. I did know that I wanted to go to business school, but, back then it was rare to go right out of undergrad. Harvard had a program, this 2+2 program, but I wasn't anywhere close to doing fulfilling the requirements for that. So I was wavering between going into the workforce versus staying at Stanford for another year to get a master's degree. And my advisors told me that the work experience would be more aligned with my long-term goals. Mm-hmm. So I worked at Microsoft for 5.5 years. But I did know that I wanted to start my own business one day and that I wanted to go to business school. So I used my time at Microsoft to gain the skills, the networks, the community, and then study myself for the GMAT.
Can you say what you... Oh, okay. Go ahead. Can you say what you worked on at Microsoft?
So I was in basically what's equivalent to IBM's global services. Okay. At Microsoft, they call it Premier Services. But it's ultimately the professional services arm of their enterprise software offerings. So on one hand, they call it technical account management. So on one hand, I had a subset of customers who had $1 million plus contracts with Microsoft, where I was their intermediary. I was their trusted advisor and point of contact. But then on the other hand, I had to stay abreast of all of Microsoft's most commonly used enterprise software. So a lot of training, a lot of exposure to how Microsoft makes money, which a lot of people think they're in competition with Apple. They are not, because they're really an enterprise software company. Enterprise productivity, that's really how they make their money, especially with the federal government. So that's kind of where I sat in between the tech and the professional services.
That's pretty cool.
That's very cool. Okay, and so then you went and did
Then
the MBA?
I went to business school. But while I was at Microsoft, I did moonlight a little bit. I started a company, a travel tech company, where I was kind of toiling around. I hired some developers in India to basically build out the first version of the product. So going into business school, I led with, even in my applications, that I want to start a tech company. And I want to use my MBA time to incubate and accelerate that initiative. So all of the schools that I applied to had a really strong entrepreneurship and innovation program.
So you just kind of like, oh yeah, I just hired some developers as a student. Like, how did you get that started before you even like, were started? Like you were still a student applying to be in a master's program at this point.
Yeah.
So like if someone's listening, they're like, I want to do that.
Yeah. Well, I was at Microsoft.
Oh, okay, that's true. You had your Microsoft money.
So you had money.
I was at Microsoft. I was single. I was also very conservative about how I spent my money. A lot of people, once they got that good job, they bought the house and the cars. I just got a little condo that I paid $65,000 for in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, that's great.
I became a homeowner at 21 years old.
That's a sound investment.
Yes. So I had a lot of disposable income. And I used that to invest in starting this company.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's wild. Like, let me think. 5 years post-bachelor's degree, I was dying in grad school.
Oh, man.
You were too. So I wasn't alone in that adventure.
Yeah. And I was just thinking, I was like, I wouldn't be able to do that.
Well, and then think about all your friends, right? Like everybody... Stephanie, everyone they were, I'm going to get married. I'm going to go travel abroad. I'm going to spend, right? Like everybody, all the engineers were out here taking photos because I was mad about it.
Everybody's on a boat.
Right. Like, what kind of job do you have that you're out here? And now I know that they were just in debt and they were just doing the most.
All the glitters is not gold.
That is right.
So how was, first of all, MIT. So you went to 2 big Ivies, right? Like very, very strong programs, renowned for what they do in engineering and in tech, in entrepreneurship too. So why MIT versus the other programs, which I know you probably applied to a lot of the other big programs too?
MIT had a really strong entrepreneurship and innovation focus that really attracted me. Also, I always wanted to go to MIT. I wanted to go undergrad. But yeah, I decided on Stanford because I wanted a more well-rounded experience. I didn't realize that MIT only had engineering and business. They don't have a med school. They don't have, education, arts. I mean, you can major in those things, but they don't really, it's not really interdisciplinary the way that Stanford is. Yeah. Also, I really am like, into sports. Like I thought that I would walk onto the Stanford basketball team, which is ridiculous because they're like top 10 in the world.
God. Like I would just show up in the gym,
Right. That was ridiculous.
That's that PG County blood going through.
But I still ended up being a manager for Stanford women's basketball because I like being around warriors, especially female warriors. And Tara Vanderveer is amazing. I think I even just learned a lot about leadership through that experience. So anyway, so that's why I went to Stanford undergrad. But MIT was always my dream school, and I only applied to 3 MBA programs in part because I got married. I got married at 24. Yeah.
Oh wow!
So we can talk about that on another thread. So I applied to Duke because I was living in North Carolina at the time. Sloan, and what was the other program? Geesh, I don't even remember. But it wasn't the big ones you think of, like Wharton or Harvard. Believe it or not, neither Stanford or MIT are Ivy League schools. I don't identify with Ivy Leagues is what 7 schools in New England.
That's true. Yeah.
But people think of them though when they think of the Ivies.
Well, they're just top schools.
Yeah,
maybe we should reframe
top
it.
Private schools.
Yeah, it's a little deeper than that. Like they have a similar origin. If you really want to go down the rabbit hole one day, look up the origin stories of the Ivy League schools, and it's just a brand that I don't identify with. So yeah, I I've never attended an Ivy.
I love that. I love that you, one, know that, and two, said it, because we would have just kept going.
You're like, that's not my story and not my testimony.
It's fine.
Yeah. No, MIT, they're a bunch of nerds. And they also have never had a legacy admissions. So,
Really? Okay.
yeah, it doesn't matter if your parents went to MIT. It does not give you a leg up to getting
That's
in,
great.
which is something that I also value. So, yeah, it was aligned. I went, and I like it again because these people are brilliant, but very humble, and just like to build, even if it's not tied to monetization, versus when I went across the Charles River into Harvard, everything was like, how is this going to make money? How can I exploit people to make money? They even joke like, we don't have to build. We hire MIT grads, right?
Wow.
Okay, whatever.
Wow.
So yes, when I thought about my legacy, MIT felt far more aligned, and the people and the network seemed far more aligned. So yeah, I was excited to get in.
That's wild. How was it? How was business school? Because it's a different world.
Yeah. Well, unlike most grad schools, everyone there is older, right? So many people are married, they have kids, they've lived lives. And it almost felt like, in a lot of ways, people wanted to live out the things that they didn't get a chance to do in undergrad.
Oh, God.
So it was a lot of travel, a lot of party, a lot of networking, which was fun. And on like the academic and professional side, it was certainly an accelerator. Like, I got exposed to a lot of different industries, a lot of different people from all over the world doing interesting things. I got to build like really authentic relationships with my professors, which later translated to me now being a lecturer at MIT. And yeah, I got my hands dirty. I was able to, like, for example, land a consulting project in Ghana. So
Wow.
I spent 6 months working with a client and then 1 month on site in Accra, which was transformational. And I don't think I would have ever been able to do that had I, stayed in corporate or, went down the traditional path of engineering master's program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, it's hard to do anything abroad when your day job is working for corporate America.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. So I know, like, you went on to decide to found this organization that addresses something that you yourself experienced.
Yeah. So I started Blendor, which is my second company, off the heels of basically the failure of my first company, because I went back to the drawing board. I went back to looking for work after recognizing that my first company wasn't going to succeed. And so got an interview with Google in New York for a mid-level position, analytical lead position, and did pretty well, made it to the final rounds of the interview until they came back and said that ultimately they didn't think I was technical enough for this role, but would hang on to my resume for a more sales or marketing role. Now, having had
Sales or marketing?
Yes. And this is common. A lot of tech companies would do this. I saw Microsoft do this, funnel their technical hires into these lower paid, fuzzier jobs. And in some ways still benefit from their expertise, but there was limited trajectory. So I politely declined that track with Google and found out a few months later that they actually, out of 55,000 employees at the time, they only had 12 Black women in technical roles.
Wow.
And this was around 2014, 2015. And the narrative that they were spreading was, it's a pipeline problem. We just can't find qualified women, people of color, especially women of color, to fill these roles. And having gone through NSBE, having gone through BDPA, having gone through inroads, right? I knew that that wasn't realistic, that
Right.
Maybe it was a network problem. So the idea for Blendor came right around the time that actually Tinder became really popular, and that I created a way for recruiters to connect, find talent, diverse talent that may not be in their traditional recruiting pools to boost their numbers, and then later evolved to removing names and photos from those profiles, leveraging large language models to map and match candidates to roles, so that we can mitigate a lot of the bias involved in the top of funnel recruiting process.
Did you get any like resistance from people with this?
Oh, absolutely. Every step of the way. A lot of companies seem to be satisfied with the status quo of diversity recruiting, which is going to these career fairs, getting a few resumes, making a few hires, but very few really wanted to figure out where bias was happening in their systems, like identify where sexism, where racism was happening, because it could make them culpable from a legal standpoint even. So the biggest challenge we faced was integrating with their existing applicant tracking system so that we could identify where bias might be happening in their processes. But without that integration, what we were trying to do is really challenging. So yeah, we had to pivot in 2020 to focus on analytics and scoring.
Can you say like any of the most like surprising things that you found out, like once you're able to, it sounds like you did some sort of like, backtracking of, okay, this is what you've done in the past and this is what we found, like anything that you're just like, wow, this is wild.
Oh, one of the most surprising things I found, and this was after we pivoted, right before the pivot to Blend Score, a company based in Atlanta called MailChimp. They had at the time a leadership team of about 8 people, and I think a level below that, maybe 12. So 20 like leaders, 0 of which were Black. And the reason why that was so shocking to me, one, I met the CEO, Ben Chestnut. It was really great. And, he was hyping me up about how he learned about Grace Hopper and, really understood the value of diversity. But Atlanta, like Prince George's County, has the highest concentration of Black professionals in the world.
Right.
So for you to be headquartered there, existing there, working there, building there, and have 0 African Americans on your leadership team, that was wild to me.
Willful ignorance. Like they're literally just walking around like this, like we can't find anybody.
Yeah, I can give Silicon Valley a pass in some cases, but not Atlanta.
Right.
Mm-mm.
That's nuts. So you pivoted and then you made like the FICO score basically for diversity for these organizations.
Yes. And the reason being was, again, a response to the resistance that we were getting around getting access to data. With FICO, as you know, they get information about what you're doing without you giving it to them. And that is a very sophisticated system that requires a lot of data engineering, a lot of cooperation, a lot of standards. And so I wanted to build the framework for that because, as you know, 2020, we saw this resurgence of all these pledges and commitments and like, this is what we're going to do. Right. And I wanted receipts. And I think a lot of people did. Yeah. Of course, now we're in a totally different anti-woke, anti-DEI game. But I still firmly believe that there is going to be a reckoning for these companies who believe that they can treat this as a PR move. Yeah. And I don't know, at the time we benefited from that momentum, particularly from an investor standpoint. A lot of investors, impact investors, wanted to know like which companies were actually putting their money where their mouth were. And similarly, job seekers want to know, particularly executives. So that's sort of how we positioned it. And then with that, gave companies sort of a framework for how to improve their score. This is similar to what the Human Rights Campaign did as well. But yeah, it was definitely a eye-opening experience, just seeing like what companies were doing versus what they were talking about publicly, but also where we could monetize this was revelatory. So yeah, that was one score.
I just have so many thoughts. Like, one is, I've worked with groups where we wanted them to have like this kind of shared governance, right? Like where you're trying to build a cooperative agreement between entities. And I know that's hard.
It's really hard.
Like I've seen it. Like, each other. Y'all have each other's cell phone numbers. You talk all the time. But the secret sauce of how you run your organization, they're not willing to go there.
Not at all.
And I think that's really interesting that was really part of why it was difficult to do the initial, ask that you had. But I also see it as like, how else do we hold corporate America accountable? Like, in what ways are we able to really kind of call them to the carpet? Like, hey, this is unacceptable that you have such a low representation of a population. I mean, for Black women, we're the most highly educated demographic, right? And so, like, if you're going to sit here and tell me that, like, we don't exist...
Right,
that's a lie.
You're not looking.
Like, you're not making an effort, or you're purposefully driving us out, preventing us from coming. And that reminds me of the comment you made earlier of like, it's about culture, right? And that may not even show up in those like interview datas. Like, it may not be there. It may be somewhere else. Where like, oh, I get you hired, but you're out in 6 months.
Yeah. And sometimes people try to make the case of, oh, this person wasn't a culture fit. And it's like, well, what is that? She doesn't look like everybody else that's here. So, and it's, you're already saying, okay, you don't look like what we have going on, so we'll never change.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to touch on your point about accountability, Jeremy. I think there is a certain level of accountability being demanded by the general public. But more importantly, I think investors are waking up to the inherent risks of not diversifying, right? Of having leadership teams that have the exact same backgrounds, exact same thoughts, exact same motives. That's risky in any business.
And we see it, right? Like, we see it in advertisement, like how stuff comes out and rolls out, and we're just like, y'all didn't have one of us on your team.
You only needed one, and we would have told you that
this
was
with
wrong.
audience, like, real quick. Like, user studies are a thing. Like, none of that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's important. And so I've adjusted messaging a bit to be less focused on, like, the public shaming of like, shame on you for having an all-white board, and more so on the audience that understands. Like, I think the Naval Academy recently announced that they are not falling in line in this race-blind admissions and hiring process because they understand the importance of having leadership and staff that reflect the communities that they're serving. And so you don't have to build a case for it. And that's what I'm hoping. I'm thinking ahead in hopes that more and more entities, organizations, institutions will recognize that, like, this is mission critical. So we need the data. We need the information.
Yeah.
Okay. So around what time did you like end this endeavor, and like what made you kind of cross over into this new space that you're in today?
Yeah, it wasn't immediate. So again, 2020, we pivoted to Blend Score, announced it to all of our investors. We then developed sort of the infrastructure and reporting around that. We put out a white paper of sorts called the State of DEI in Tech, and then later the State of DEI in Finance in 2021.
Linked on the website.
And then we just started talking to potential acquirers right around that like 2021, 2022 timeframe. In the meantime, I'd scaled down the business a bit, scaled down operations because we just weren't making enough money to justify having a full-time team. And I started dabbling in what I wanted to do next. What was the follow-up question?
It was basically like you were talking about, oh, I'm the only Black person in your space. You don't exactly, and I'm not that person. And then I read something where you talked about, being on stages for poverty porn.
Yes.
That is such a like dynamic statement to make. Can you say more about this? Because I was like, I think I know what you mean, but.
Yes. So one of the things that I didn't mention when you all asked about my childhood was the come up story, right? So during the 80s, as many of us know, the crack boom hit. It hit particularly hard here in the DC area. And it was also during the whole Reaganomics era. And so my mother, a college graduate, was single, pregnant, unemployed, and struggled with drug addiction. My biological father, who I never met, was incarcerated on drug charges. Like the 80s hit hard for my family, much like it did a lot of Black people. And so I incorporated this story into my founding story because I wanted to emphasize the extent of my trajectory from that to Palo Alto. Because, I was told the founder story can be really impactful in how people remember you, how it resonates. So fast forward to, me raising money for this company. I'm going into pitch meetings, enterprise sales pitch meetings, and people are pulling me to the side and saying, oh, make sure you talk about your childhood story. And I'm like, this is weird.
That's
okay.
Cringe.
It doesn't feel like the setting, but I'll rock with it, right? Because I didn't really need this contract.
Yeah.
Right.
When it really hit home was I was accepted into this accelerator in San Francisco, and they had an investment arm. And, like most accelerators, it's meant to help you get access to capital. And I was really struggling to get the resources, the investment, et cetera. But at the end, I got an email invitation to be a speaker at this really high profile CEO event. And they offered to pay me a sum that was far more than what I was asking for in investment, just to get on stage for 15 minutes and talk about my childhood story in front of millionaires.
Wow.
And that's when it hit home with me. I'll never forget it. I was at the dinner beforehand, which was lavish, and I looked around. There was, of 100 people, maybe only 2 other Black people in the room. And of course, all the people serving us were Black, and were looking at me like, pardon my French, like, who's on that nair? Do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh, like, I am that person. I am here to perform. They don't have any interest in investing in this company or advancing the work that I'm doing. I am positioned to what I felt kind of play into this narrative of like how we can pull ourselves up from our bootstraps to validate or even mitigate some of the guilt that why do these rooms look like this
the way they do
after 100 years of a lot of work, money, and toil. It felt
That's
like
another
they needed
podcast
me
episode.
there, right? It felt like they needed me there.
They're like, see, the other ones just aren't doing this.
Exactly. Exactly. And again, I am not that girl. I am the first to admit that how I got to Stanford, MIT, all of these things was a combination of luck, being in the right place at the right time, and sure, hard work, but there are a lot of people who work really, really hard, and we can't continue to buy it. Those of us who make it can't continue to buy into this narrative that it's a meritocracy.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Thank you.
I hear
for sharing
that. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're doing something totally different, right? Because like you were like you used your experiences, to your point, like this tapestry of experiences, to now create something that positions us to be visible, to share, our stories and help us get the support that we need, right? And that's through visible figures, which I love because, modern figures. So,
I love it.
Yes. It started off as just like an elixir, like I said, when I moved to the Bay, I needed to find my people, and visible figures, the community of women who had also gone through the gauntlet of trying to raise capital. It almost felt like we were veterans in the same war. We shared a lot of trauma, and we needed a lot of support because our families, of course, couldn't understand. Why would you quit that good job? Why would you, you got all this expensive education, you got all these loans, and you want to do what? It's very isolating. And so I started initially just to create a space for us to be able to connect and commiserate. But then it evolved to like I said, after leaving the venture fund, how can I formalize this in a way that really advances the work while also prioritizing our self-care? So the nonprofit side is really focused on the latter, like community wellness, and trying to be a model for how we can continue to strive, but not neglect our health in the process. And the advancement side of it, the prosperity side of it, I tell people I feel like Charles Xavier and X-Men. Like, these women are superheroes. And I meet them and I'm like, okay, we need to figure out how to harness and direct this energy, these powers you have, in the right way, because it's just phenomenal. And one of the things that I learned in business school and that they teach you as a capitalist is the way to become successful is to find and cultivate undervalued or distressed assets, right? You see this in real estate, right? The people who go into the hood and they're like, oh, I'm about to buy up all of this and then sell it for more, right? So my motives aren't quite that purely capitalistic, but it's a similar idea. If you have an undervalued asset, the market is just not recognizing the true value, which is clear, right? In terms of how we're being underpaid, the lack of equity, the lack of promotion. It just requires some work and intentionality, some investment, to ensure that you can get the value for those assets that are deserved. So that's really the for-profit intention behind Visible Figures is how can we position these amazing, amazing people to achieve the level of wealth and notoriety that they deserve and that the market needs.
And when you say like the African diaspora, that's all of us?
All of us, yes. So I have, like I said, my first real exposure professionally was in Accra. And I've been back maybe like 7 times since. I'm in Nigeria about every other year. We've done some work in London, Paris. I recently met Prime Minister Mia Mottley in Barbados.
Wow.
And yeah, I'm trying to source as well as capture and reach as many brown women. I mean, I'm starting with Black women, but I think, women across the global South are experiencing the highest level of opportunities for education in human history. And if there can be a framework to harness and cultivate that talent, it's the next level.
Okay, I have to connect you with someone after this.
Please.
Because I just had a thought. Okay, so I love everything that you're doing. And I know Kyla does too. She just doesn't have the same energy that I do. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I'm just sitting here in awe, like, man, and she took the time to be on this podcast. Like, I'm just sitting here in awe.
What? I love you ladies. I love what you're doing. This is aligned. We are aligned.
Absolutely. That is my word for 2025, alignment.
Alignment, okay.
Yeah.
I can see it. Okay, so in your free time, somehow you're a lecturer.
Somehow.
Like, why?
Because you clearly don't need this job, but...
Well, the best way to learn is to teach. I don't know if you guys have heard that. That's how I've accomplished really challenging things in life, is to teach it to others. So there's that. Also, I don't know if you guys are subscribed to my newsletter. I recently wrote about Nikki Giovanni, who had a 37-year career at Virginia Tech. I think a key part of our success as women leaders in the diaspora is to develop a reputation and comfort with operating in Western institutions. Institutionalization is a key muscle that I just don't think we can run away from. There are so many different nuances, politics, structures embedded in these institutions, and MIT has graciously afforded me the opportunity to participate and engage with just a small course, a 2-day course every winter. But I do guest lectures all throughout. And I want to do more of it. I envision being a professor at some point in my retirement years. So this is just kind of like,
right.
A little foray, a little testing, a little,
You dip your pinky toe in.
Right. Yeah.
You get the benefits of being a professor, but not having to deal with students for 16 weeks and get my homework and all that stuff.
Yes.
You're still in college. Dogs are still eating homework.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. This is so good. Yes. Y'all need to go to conferences.
I'm telling you.
Excuse me. Go to conferences, but don't just go to the conference. Go to the social activities.
Meet the people.
Network with people, right?
Yes.
Have real life conversations with folks, because you never know what might result from that. And here we are.
Yes.
4 years later, after coloring at a Google party.
Right. Literally after coloring.
That's real.
Oh my
Conferences have been some of the most important aspects of my professional career. And what you said about having those authentic interactions, I think, is really key. And I've structured a lot of our visible figures events around that concept. So I try not to bring in speakers and force people into all day programming, but rather just get the right people in the room. It's funny you mentioned coloring at a table. I, like a wedding, strategically put people at the same table who I think need to have a conversation. And not try to add too much structure to it, because they're already amazing and already capable of striking up interesting conversations. And so, yeah, that's something I'm trying to innovate around. And it also requires creating a space where people feel comfortable being vulnerable and being present, meaning keeping your phone down.
Right. Yeah.
And, you know, I have like a passion for hospitality. I don't know what I'll do with it, but that's a key part.
Yeah, you had a whole
too,
travel
like,
company.
Yeah, exactly.
Hospitality.
Yeah, working at TripAdvisor. So yeah, I try to incorporate that in our events too. Just like, how can I make you feel comfortable with food, with smell, with sound, with decor, so that
a whole immersive experience.
Yeah. So you can just relax and like really look the person in the eye who's talking to you.
I feel like maybe a little bit of that could be from your experiences, you know, at these very high end, in these very high end spaces, right? Like one of your hobbies is skiing, right? You can't just ski everywhere, right? You can't just ski everywhere. And international skiing is like it's a whole experience, right? Like driving up onto the property. That is an experience. And then you go inside and then it's like sights and smells and like how cozy it is and how warm you feel, even though it's frigid outside. Like, yeah, I totally can see that.
Yeah. Jeremy and I have made 2 skiing attempts.
How'd it go?
Back-to-back years.
Snowboarding.
Yeah, the first year, did you go? We've gone for MLK Day to places where there was snow and was skiing available.
Okay.
Did we snow? Did we ski? We did not.
So I like to do like an MLK ski weekend situation, not Black MLK ski weekend, which I think is like amazing. And we did that once in like Boyne Falls, Michigan. And I was like,
okay. And that's a party, like pajama
It was a party.
It
was a time.
I heard about that.
It was a time.
We figured out that we might have been there at the same time. Cause like in grad school, I went to grad school in Michigan. So like we definitely did the ski trip. Like
there's the potential we were there.
There's the potential we were there at the same one.
Okay.
But then I was just like, you know what? We don't do anything MLK weekend. We should just all get together and hang out. And it's turned into like, Jeremy's planning a thing.
Yeah.
Like, let's all go. And so it's like 6 or so Black female faculty and our people.
Yeah.
Whoever they may be, along with us. And we just like go sit in a cabin somewhere, and sometimes there's skiing and snowboarding and sometimes there's not. Yeah. Because depends on where we are.
Yeah, it depends on what's going on with us. Sometimes we just need to sit down and talk and woo-saw, and that's fine too.
In the snow. Being cute.
I am about that life. Yeah, for sure. There is something about the confines of that cabin, that lodge, that house, that it just makes you want to stay in and, you know, lounge, chill, talk, drink, whatever. Yeah. I'm about that. And actually, it's funny you bring that up because everyone's asking me, like, what are you doing for MLK? Because it falls on the inauguration of Donald Trump.
Right. So we gotta be somewhere like processing together.
Yes. In our piece.
So this is my idea. You heard it here first. So by the way, the reason why I got involved in skiing was another aunt, the one who graduated from Howard, the one who's really the reason why I'm here. She got involved with this organization called the National Brotherhood of Skiers, which has a large annual Black Ski Summit. But the DC club called Black Ski had a youth development program, and they sponsored my training from the age of 4 to the age of 17. So I was introduced to skiing here in Wakanda.
That is where were you skiing? Like, you're not going to shoot.
Ski Liberty, a small mountain in southern Pennsylvania, about an hour and a half drive from DC.
I was about to say, now I know you were not skiing in nobody's Rock Creek Park.
You could, a little cross country. But yeah, so she used to tell me about how they used to take these trips where they would occupy an entire train car going up to Vermont and then get these houses and, you know, they're getting lit on the train and you get there, you get to the house and like you said, exactly. So I'm thinking about pitching this. I'm thinking about proposing this to some of my friends and maybe opening up to the community. MLK 2025. Let's take a train and go up to New Hampshire, Vermont, maybe even Maine, you know, where civilization is, and just chill and ski and sip hot toddies.
I love it.
I love it already. I'm there in my head right now.
It's a vibe. It's totally a vibe. Oh my goodness, Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your story. Of course, of course. Okay. So how do you want people to find you? How should they connect with you after?
So one, subscribe to my newsletter, visiblefigures.substack.com. And you can also follow me on LinkedIn. That's probably my most actively used social media platform. And if you want to just be nosy, you can check out my Instagram. But I think I deleted a lot of things. So I only have like 7 posts. And I've made a decision to limit my activity to Instagram to just things that are healthy, because I don't like the FOMO that it creates. So yeah, that's it. LinkedIn, Instagram, and Substack.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is great.
Yay.